Hi, everyone. I'm Tina Barton, a senior elections expert for the elections group. Before we get started, I would like to mention that the Q&A feature should be on for participants to ask questions during the Q&A portion of today's workshop. We will answer as many questions as we can at the end of today's session. The elections group is an elections consulting organization. We partner with state and local election officials to implement new programs or improve processes for voters and stakeholders. We provide guidance, resources, and direct management support for jurisdictions. Our team is made up of all former election officials from across the United States. You can find more information about the elections group using the link to our website, which can be found in the chat. This conversation is hosted in conjunction with the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections, a cross-partisan group of experts in election administration and law enforcement who aim to support policies and practices that protect election workers and voters from violence, threats, and intimidation. Learn more at safeelections.org. Today, I have with me some very distinguished panelists. I'm excited to have these three individuals because of the experience that they bring, the knowledge that they bring, and also just the passion that they have for helping our profession. So today, I would like to start by introducing Sheriff Justin Smith. He's a retired sheriff out of Larimer County, Colorado. Sheriff Justin Smith served 3 terms as the sheriff of Larimer County, Colorado, and has 35 years of law enforcement experience. In addition, he is a graduate of the 223rd session of the FBI National Academy and the 102nd session of the National Sheriff's Institute. Thank you, Sheriff Smith. Next, Trevor Timmons, one of my teammates at the elections group and serves as our Chief Technology Officer. Prior to joining the elections group, Trevor served the Colorado Secretary of State's office as the Chief Information Officer from 2007 to 2023. After 8 years as Deputy CIO and Director of Software Development. During the time he served under several Secretaries of State, Colorado gained a national reputation in several areas, including elections administration, business registrations, and cybersecurity operations. Welcome, Trevor. Last but certainly not least, Captain Harold Love, Michigan State Police, retired as a captain there. He's also the owner and licensed professional counselor at Harold J. Love and Associates. Harold Love served 25 years with the Michigan State Police before retiring as a captain in 2013. Love is a national board certified, fully licensed professional counselor. He currently works in his private practice as a behavioral health clinician, providing services to public safety professionals and the general public. Thank you for joining us, Captain Love. So over the last few years, election officials have faced challenges that they never thought that they would. Many of these challenges have been related to their personal safety, as well as that of their staff and their family members. A handful of these stories have made national headlines. Yet we know from a survey conducted by the Brennan Center for Justice that nearly 1 in 3 election officials have been threatened, harassed, or abused in the last 4 years. In a year that promises to be filled with high emotions and people on both sides who feel passionate about their politics, we want to arm election officials with information that may protect them. In the last few months, we've also seen a disturbing number of swatting events occurring. Most recently, even the White House fell victim to swatting. In addition to swatting, election officials from locals up to secretaries of state have been doxxed. So we are here today to learn from all of you exactly what swatting and doxxing are, what we can do to help prevent it, what to do if it happens to us, and the emotional impact that these events may have on the victims. So first, while I'm sure many that are listening or watching are familiar with the terms swatting and doxxing, I think it would be helpful if we can learn from each of you really what your definition, or to explain it to us, what swatting and doxxing are. So I'd like to start with you, Trevor. Would you explain to us exactly what doxxing is?
Sure, and thank you, Tina, and thanks everyone for joining today. Again, honored to be on this panel. That's terrific. Doxing actually maybe evolved from a couple of terms around dropping documents. Some of you may have referred to documents as docs, and then dropping documents has kind of evolved into this term doxing. And doxing really involves the intentional revelation or publication of a person's private information online and without their consent, and often with some malicious intent behind that publication of personal information. The types of information that we've seen in doxing incidents includes phone numbers, home addresses, identification numbers like social security numbers, maybe credit card numbers, maybe driver's license numbers. Personal photos is also something that we've seen frequently in doxing incidents. And so really it's, against your will, somebody reveals personal information about you that frequently can then lead to some malicious activity.
Wow, that's intense. Sheriff Smith, I read a story where it was stated that swatting has escalated from prank calls to digital terrorism. Can you tell me exactly what swatting is? And do you think that's a fair description of how the danger in it has escalated?
Thank you, Tina. And again, appreciate the opportunity to be here and the folks that joined in on this important conversation. Just maybe a little background on what swatting is and how it's developed and kind of a little history with that. Swatting is in effect another form of a hoax or a false report to police, but it's a very specific one where police will get all kinds of false reports of crimes or events. But swatting really came about originally interestingly in the gaming community, online gamers who would be watching each other. And the initial one was making a report to a police agency of some kind of an active shooter. Forgive me, I got a little bug in my throat. But a false report to the police on that with the intent of, Harold, can you pick this up for me for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. False, as he's saying, false police reports with the intent of having police respond to another person's house to create a disruption, cause embarrassment, and basically wreak havoc on that person's private home, office, or any other kind of an installation or institution. And if you can imagine this happening, whether it be at your office, at a school, or at a home, having the police arrive in tactical gear, ready to take on whatever they were told was at that location, whether it be an active shooter, some type of a violent incident going on, that sort of thing. And then people are subjected to that. You can imagine the different types of things that can go wrong in that situation.
Yeah, and is there when a call like that goes in, is there do police have to assume that this is a real event taking place and really respond in that way?
I can jump back in here. I got a glass of water. I apologize. And Harold was a great description. In essence, the ways to get ahead of it, there's ways that police can spot these. They're learning because they don't typically come into a 911 line, because those are really hard to get into with a fake number. They'll come into a non-emergency line, and 911 operators are learning that typically if you have a true active shooter, you're going to be getting multiple calls. The nature, the sounds, these aren't quite right when they come in, but police tend to you make an assumption these are legitimate calls, but there's ways for them to spot what might not be true. And part of the message to police is that, as funny as it sounds, to slow down a little bit when these come in and make sure that they're understanding what this is. If there's signs it's a hoax, that the 911 or the police know who to reach out to at a location and find out, are things okay? There's still going to be a police response, but as Harold mentioned, not a tactical response, a one officer that comes up and talks to somebody there to make sure it's okay.
Yeah, so as I'm thinking about this, obviously it seems to me that there could be some connection here, maybe looking to you, Trevor, and to law enforcement both here. Are victims finding themselves swatted for, doxed first and then swatted, or, can they stand mutually exclusive, or does there seem to be a connection here?
Sure. I'll go ahead and start with that, and then maybe if Harold or Justin want to say something. So generally, if it's targeted at individuals, we do generally see doxing occurring before a swatting incident. That's because someone's home address or a phone number, or that personal information, credit card numbers, social security numbers are revealed online. Usually that has to be published somewhere before you could see that escalate onto swatting. With a couple of significant exceptions. I know that several school systems across the country have been subject to swatting attempts. The locations of schools are published, and so there's not necessarily any sort of doxing that happens ahead of that. But we've also seen swatting attempts, at organizations or entities or specific buildings. But if it's targeted at an individual, we usually do see that preceded by some doxing of some personal information.
Do either of our law enforcement partners have anything to add to that? Okay. So
No,
both
nothing to add.
both of these sound really terrifying to me. To even have all my personal information out there and available. I mean, I know I've tried to take measures so that, personal information for me has been eliminated as much as possible. So the possibility of that happening and all of that being put out there, or to be just enjoying an evening home with my family and all of a sudden be surrounded with armed officers thinking that something is taking place. I think, for instance, at the White House, they said there was a fire and somebody was trapped or something like that. So there often tends to be a story attached to it. While we may not be able to 100% prevent, something like this from happening, what actions can election officials take that might decrease the likelihood of these events taking place?
Sure. So Tina, actually, CSSE and the elections group, we've worked together to develop a couple of products that may be useful. They're really just checklists to kind of provide some information on how you can protect yourself from these types of incidents. You're seeing this protecting yourself from doxing on the screen. You can grab the QR code, take a shot of that, and download this document. And I wanted to point out the very first item on that list is be proactive. Hey, you're here at this webinar. That's why we checked that off for you. You're already being proactive by even trying to learn something about how this happens. And I'll just walk through a little bit of the content of this in terms of how you can protect yourself from doxing. It kind of starts with the basics, right? Patching your devices, phones, laptops, your wireless router at home. If you've got home electronics, smart home devices, doorbells and cameras, make sure that those are patched and up to date with security patches. Another thing is to lock your devices, lock your phone, lock your laptop. Be conscious when you have your personal devices through which people can access email accounts and things like that. Make sure that you're taking appropriate security measures on those. One thing that's really handy but can also be leveraged by a malicious actor is find my phone or find my device functionality. Make sure that you're mindful of who has access to that information, and that if there's not a current need for you to have that activated, consider turning it off. It's just another vector that a malicious actor could use to try to target you. And then the last in this basic section, most online systems, especially social media platforms, will allow you to monitor logins, right? And where those logins are coming from geographically. It's the basics, right? Make sure that you know what devices have access to your accounts. Make sure that they're your accounts, your devices, and then just keep your eyes on whether you're seeing any login attempts from areas that you're not in or you haven't been in. It's just basic kind of cybersecurity hygiene. I'll just briefly touch on a couple of these other things. On social media accounts, don't overshare, right? Be considerate of what information you're posting, how broadly that can be seen. Public versus private accounts, small groups on social media platforms may have different visibility into what you're saying, than if you're posting on a very public forum. Everyone for every system that offers it ought to enable multi-factor authentication. I'm sorry, I skipped through a couple things. Limit the amount of personal information on your account, and don't share your information in real time. I'll confess, I used to attend conferences several years ago. There'd be a great speaker on the stage. I'd take a photo, I would post that on Twitter. I don't do that anymore. That's giving up valuable information about where you are at that time, and sometimes who else is there.
Right.
And so I've kind of adopted a practice of, posting those photos and giving compliments to speakers after the event is done, after I've left that physical location. I'll touch on the website accounts, good password hygiene, use complex passwords, don't reuse them from any one site to another site. Enable multi-factor authentication on anything that supports it. Having a mobile phone, SMS authentication is good. Using an authenticator app like Authy or Duo or Google Authenticator is even better because they're not so dependent on you having physical possession of that phone. And then I'd encourage people to think about what information is captured and displayed within your profile on those website accounts. Can people see what city you're from? Can they see your phone number? Can they see your date of birth? Just be cautious when you're posting information online about yourself. And then the last area here of protecting yourself from doxing, review personal data that is already out there about you. You can search for personally identifiable information, email addresses, photos, phone numbers, addresses, and make sure that you're not oversharing information that people could use to try to, have you targeted, for doxing or for a swatting incident. I'd consider using virtual phone numbers and throwaway email addresses. There are services out there. Google Voice is free. There are other options that are fee-based services, but you can use a virtual phone number, and if that ends up being posted online in a doxing incident, you can turn that phone number off and grab a new one, and you won't have to change your personal number. You can keep that active if you're using a virtual phone number that actually, kind of fronts for your actual number. I encourage people to check for credential exposure. Data breaches are a fact of life. Probably everyone in this webinar has received a letter within the last 12 months saying, oh, sorry, somebody accessed information, from your account, whether it's a phone company, a healthcare company, a cable provider. And you can actually check to see if your credentials, your email address, and sometimes even your passwords have been exposed due to a data breach. Have I Been Pwned is actually a great resource. It's free that you can check. They aggregate data breach information to try to help you be proactive and figure out if your login and password has been exposed in some of those data breaches. There are a ton of resources that are available. This is kind of a checklist. We'll actually extend this with some specific links to some of the products and services that offer this. Some are free, some charge a fee, but really it's about protecting yourself and being mindful of what information of yours is freely available to anyone out there in the public. Tina?
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. I actually use the Google Voice also. And one of the things I love about that is somebody has to tell me who they are on the other end before I accept their call. So they have to say their name, and I can at that time either accept or decline the call by knowing who the person is. So I find that handy. Another thing that I have done is I noticed when I went out to some of the real estate apps that are out there, like Zillow, Realtor, those types of websites, that people could have access to really view pictures of the whole inside of your home. So not only were they, if they knew your address, they could also like look inside your home and kind of get a feel for the layout of it, what the exterior looks like. I actually petitioned those sites to remove pictures of my house. And so that was done. So you can actually go out there to groups like Zillow and Realtor and ask them to remove the pictures of your home. So if someone does get your address, they're at least not getting an insight into what your house looks like from the outside or the inside. So that was something that I also have found valuable in kind of removing some of the information about myself.
No, that's great, Tina. And I do want to go ahead and respond to, I see a question from one of our attendees. And the question is thoughts on Face ID and password protector apps. So Face ID, I'm a user of Face ID. I think the technology behind that is pretty good. Biometrics are usually pretty strong. And I think the way that they're implemented on Android and Apple devices is actually pretty good. But that's a personal decision as to whether you'd want to do that or not. And then on password protector apps, so I'm going to interpret that as a password manager. I am a huge believer in a password manager. There are a number of them out there. I'd encourage you to look at Bitwarden, 1Password. There are good options out there to use. I think password managers make it really easy for you to use very complex passwords, never reused across websites, and give you the ability to kind of protect those and actually apply good password practices with minimal additional effort required by a user. Tina?
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add a comment on what Trevor just talked about, password managers. Many of them also let you know when a password has been compromised and will suggest that you change, and sometimes even give you suggestions for that change.
Great, thank you. I appreciate all that information, Trevor. That's all really good stuff. And thank you for that new resource that we have out there. So the second resource that you mentioned that we have worked on with the elections group and the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections is a combating swatting attempts resource. And I find that this is kind of falls in line also with the 5-step plan that the CSSE has when we talk with our election officials and law enforcement. And the first step is to meet. So it's to meet, share, agree, plan, and practice. And in that meeting and sharing, I can see where a lot of this type of information that we're suggesting through this resource could be part of the discussions that take place. Specifically on here when it talks to steps to combat swatting, and Sheriff Smith, if you'd like, I could go ahead and kind of cover this. I know that you're a little under the weather. But first of all,
I'll do a little better if you're fine.
Okay, so jump in anytime you want here. But ensure elections office establish a dialogue, and that's where we're talking about, meeting with them, sharing with them, coming to agreements, but having conversations, and then providing that liaison with the names and physical home addresses of election offices, so that if a call were to come in saying that an incident had occurred or something happens where a call comes into 911, they already have a list of your name addresses on file, and they know exactly who is going to be at that address when that call comes in. And then ask law enforcement if it's possible to have a flag put into their computer through their dispatch system also, so that if 911 receives that call, they can also know exactly who's on the other end, and they can let those responding officers know exactly what home they're responding to. Sheriff Smith,
And with that, Tina, yeah, if you don't mind, just point out with that, nowhere in here can we prevent swatting from occurring. What we're looking to do is to mitigate their ability to impact by taking these preventative steps. And as you mentioned with the flag and the computer system, what that is based on location. So if it were to come, any number calls and uses your home address or somewhere you might be and says, there's an active shooter, that the flag would say this happens to be our elections director, so-and-so. And what they could do is make that note so the initial dispatcher would kind of flag this might be a location for potential swatting, so that they're thinking that way. But they could also do something like add your name and cell phone number in there, and the agency might be able to simply call you first when this phone call comes in, and that could be at your location. And as you're kind of alluding to here, Tina, all your different elections polling locations. have those noted if possible as well through the police agency and their 911 system. Because, one of the intents on a swatting could be you individually, harassed to cause something, but the other might be to disrupt an election. And that's what we're thinking about on that perspective, is giving the tools. So if somebody were to use it and try to do that, that you wouldn't have the police showing up, potentially disrupting the election, causing problems. But by putting that information in there, that's the values they can mitigate and kind of know what they're dealing with and have the flags there to alert them.
Yeah, I just want to add that, some of these things may seem complicated while you're hearing about them, but if you think about it, we've been doing this for decades with like burglar alarm systems and things like that. When we respond to banks or businesses or even many homes, there's a key holder, in the system with the police department. We get an alarm, you contact the key holder while somebody is responding, and many times, the response is called off because we've made contact with the key holder and yes, there's nothing going on, that sort of thing. It's the same type of a process and it's very effective.
No, and I can attest to that, Captain Love. We actually just got one of those calls last week from our alarm company, where it said that the alarm had gone off and it appeared there was broken glass. So I have two 100-pound dogs here at my house to blame for that alarm response. So I can attest to the fact that does happen, and they will respond. So thank you for that. So for those of you who are looking for information about swatting attempts, combating them, please download this resource, share this out with your teams, and anyone else, and especially in public service that you find this could be valuable for. So thank you. So Trevor, I'll turn to you. As you know, we live in this increasingly digital world. It seems that there is an app for every single thing out there. There are various social media platforms where people share all kinds of information about themselves. For many, social media accounts are valuable tools to connect with friends and family. I personally have family and friends scattered all over the country, as I'm sure you all do too. These platforms are kind of that one place that I can go to keep in touch with all of them. However, the personal information that we share in social media can be exploited and tracked, as you kind of mentioned in the checklist that we have. Are there some other security measures we can put in place to help protect our social media accounts and our online information, other than those things that might have been in the checklist?
Sure. I mean, it's a great question, Tina. There are a couple of ways that I think you can kind of see what your online footprint, your digital footprint looks like. Google offers a privacy checklist that's actually pretty good at trying to identify potential overexposure of information. One thing we haven't mentioned is Google Street View and Apple Maps offers photos, for navigation. That's really cool. They also allow you to blur out your home address. And so, there's a Google on Google Street View, the text is really tiny at the bottom right, but you can actually fill out a form and say, oh, I work in an area where I might be subject to targeting, and you can ask them to actually blur out a photo of your residence. This, in my case, turned out really handy. One of my cars was parked in my driveway, and when they blurred the view of my house from the street, they also blurred the license number of that vehicle. And so that can be really handy. I'd consider when you're posting on any platform, I know we all have a kind of a business persona and our official work that we do, but people will not just stop there if they're actually trying to target you. And so think about how you're sharing personal information, a family dinner at a restaurant, a family outing at some public space. Be thoughtful about what you're sharing and when. You don't want to provide maybe an avenue for someone who's got ill will in their heart to actually target you and actually maybe take some action. Vacations, that's one thing you can think about. And another area that I think most browsers allow you to do, and Facebook and some of the websites, is you can opt out of personalization of ads. Okay, so it's actually a little bit helpful. The ads won't be right as targeted to searches that you're conducting, Amazon things you're thinking about buying, but it actually just lowers the exposure profile of your online persona. And then the last thing to point out, this is the last item on the list that we provided. There are companies out there that offer professional help to kind of take a look at your digital footprint and maybe take action on those. We've listed a couple of those on that handout that we've got. If you are at risk, you could consider going down that path. You know, even before you get there, you can do a Google search for your name, for your home address, for phone numbers, and you can start to get a picture of what your digital footprint online actually looks like. Tina.
Great, thank you. So I'm kind of going to stick with you on this just for a little bit, Trevor, to kind of cover a little bit more on this doxing before we move on to some more about the swatting. But once a person discovers that they have been doxed, again, sounds horrible and horrific and traumatic. What do I do? What are my next steps as that individual? What should I be doing to not only like help keep myself safe, but you know, there's no like putting this proverbial genie back in the bottle, right? Like it's out there. Is there ways to like get it to come back to remove it from certain sites, or is it just out there now?
Sure. So great question, Tina. So some of those services that I mentioned already, I mean, there are data aggregators out there that, you know, collect data about individuals and make that available. Some of the services are out there. They will go out there and on a monthly basis, they'll remove your information. They will identify new sites or services that are providing information about you. So that's one option to consider. Okay, but like right in the moment when something like this happens and you realize that you've been doxxed, a few things that I'd suggest people do. The first thing is mute accounts if you can online that are posting information about you. Block those accounts if you can, and then report all of the platforms. The app that will not be named used to start with TW. It still has that functionality. Facebook, Instagram, they all offer the ability to report if your online persona is, if you believe it's being subject to abuse, right? Take advantage of that. Go ahead and report that stuff. The second thing is document what you're seeing. Document the abuse, the harassment, the doxing that's come to your attention. If you document it at that time, it'll be much easier down the road because the third thing I'd suggest is depending on what that level of harassment is, report it. You can report it to law enforcement. If you work for a government entity, you probably have a liaison to a state fusion center for law enforcement. A second thing is warn your colleagues. If you work in an office and you're being targeted, there may be other people within your same office that may be next on the list or may also be being actively targeted. And so, you know, warn them, let them know. And then the last thing, I'd go back to the very start. Scrub your information, right? Doing it after is better than never doing it because you can try to diminish the spread a little bit, you know, by reporting it, by documenting what you've seen, you know, depending on the level of harassment, reaching out to law enforcement for assistance, and then scrubbing that information. That's what I would suggest that people do.
I think that's great, Trevor. And we, when we're out doing a lot of our tabletop exercises and we're working through certain scenarios where election officials have found themselves being threatened, those are certainly 3 points that we try to make because law enforcement has told us that that's been a struggle with some of the reports that have come in is they don't have a lot of documentation or they haven't retained all of the evidence, if you will, maybe emails or voicemails. So that is something that we try to always emphasize in any of these types of scenarios is document it, report it, and then retain it. And so I think that that's also really great information when it comes to this. So Sheriff Smith and Captain Love, we had talked about obviously the swatting side of this now. And in that resource that we are providing, we tell a lot of things that you can do kind of to help maybe prevent it if possible, or things, measures you can have in place should it happen. Even as, you know, as far as like establishing protocols for communication between your staff. and train your staff to remain calm, and then ensuring that security plans remain confidential. So those are kind of all some more things that are on that list. But I turn to both of you and say, should an instance of swatting take place, what is the next step for the victim of that? And how do they make sure that they, along with their colleagues and their loved ones, stay safe while the situation is being investigated or as it's unfolding?
So I'm going to address the first part, then I'll turn it over to Captain Love maybe to follow up a little bit on that first part, Tina. Part of that is like with your staff, train them what swatting is, what that potential might look like. Obviously, you want to have those protocols, how you communicate with your police. But in the event that call comes in, that the staff at your office or your polling locations know, okay, this is what a swatting incident is. Remain calm. Be slow and deliberate with the police officers. You know, they could be very amped up if they believe this is a true active shooter. And what you want to do is show all those quiet, don't argue, just quietly, the hands up type of thing. And say, I think we may be swatted. We are all safe here, and help bring that temperature down so that the signs they're getting from your staff aren't someone who's elevated that might be consistent with something that's going on. But and quickly you'll find that'll bring the temperature down in the immediate, so you can keep that. So I think that question was out there. That's what we would recommend, is that your staff is prepared and thinks through, during the election cycle, this is possible. Then I'm going to ask Captain Love to step in and from his his perspective on the wellness and mental health part, some of those impacts, how to mitigate and prepare for those.
Yes, and so I think about communication in the midst of it. Something has been communicated that, again, has the police coming in, at a very high level, of concern and things like that. And the sooner we can communicate what is actually happening, the better. And if there is a designated person to contact your dispatch, your local police department or whatever, to let them know that we know that you've got this call, we know that they're coming. Here's what's really happening, and tell us what you want us to do, so that we can ensure that we, continue on this communication to, as Justin says, to bring the temperature down. When you think of, a swatting incident, any type of an incident that may overwhelm a person's ability to cope, we call those critical incidents or a traumatic incident. And it's going to be traumatic on different levels for different people. Some people may think it's fun. Some people may think it's exciting and, wow, that was a rush. While others, they're totally devastated emotionally by the fact that the police were called to our place and guns are coming out, or even, thinking that there may be something really going on that they're not aware of. And the way, that impacts a person can be devastating. The initial impact, an adrenaline rush, or this fear that just kind of cripples a person's ability to be functional in whatever they're doing, whether it's talking to somebody or just going on with their daily lives. You may feel faint even, or going through the shakes and sweating and things like that. And then, subsequently after that shock is just really happening. The fear of, what if it happens again, or did they really resolve everything that is going on here, or am I still in danger? Being angry about it, feeling violated, that sort of thing. So people go through a lot of different emotions and things like that, not only while it's happening, but shortly after. And then, I'll wait to talk about some of the more long-term things that people experience down the road.
So
Tina,
as someone, yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, if you don't mind. The Committee for Safe and Secure Elections has done a great amount of work to try to build bridges between election officials and between law enforcement and first responders. And I just want to emphasize that. The first time to have that conversation with a trusted law enforcement partner is not when the swatting is happening, but it's actually ahead of time. And so I'd encourage election officials and law enforcement, just as CSSE has done, for a long time, encourage that relationship building and the establishment of trust even before the incident. Because if you're on that list, as Sheriff Smith mentioned, if you've already been flagged that, oh, you're someone who may be subjected to this, you've got better odds of there being a prudent and a measured response than in some other instances.
And one more thing I'll add to those good points is communication, one within your staff, that you have a mechanism to share if that comes in, because you think of, as Harold talked about, the panic for those involved. Imagine if that is going as a news event and your other staff's hearing, and they're even for a short period thinking there may be a shooting at an elections location. So to communicate with them, and then and one of the things I'll say is with these swatting incidents, if you watch, they very often now we're seeing a trend, they happen in multiples, and it may be within a region around the country. And so have that communications network between elections officials in your state, whether that's maybe using the Secretary of State's office or your association. You have a way that you can share. If it's happening in your office with your staff, it's good to alert everybody else, hey, there's some swatting incidents going on in our state, and let them share. And that sharing can be through law enforcement, through fusion centers, making sure they're aware to watch out for those. And the law enforcement end, if one pops up somewhere in my state, I want that shared to other police agencies so that that's immediately on their mind as well. And then one comment that I'll make, that what Harold was referring to afterwards with those emotions, in our profession, we've really gone after a critical incident, and this is a lot of what Harold does, is a debrief, that you take that pause afterwards to deal with those emotions and recognize that. And as much as you need to get back to work, if it's in the election cycle, recognize that there may be what we call kind of a tactical pause. Take some time and let people share those feelings and emotions. Let them work their way through it. And that's a lot of what Harold does. Because I can tell you, in policing, we've learned the value of that. That really mitigates long-term impacts because you took some time to deal with it. And we certainly find that helpful. And I think the same goes in the elections community if you were to end up on the receiving end of something traumatic.
Great, thank you. I know that Trevor just kind of mentioned the work that CSSE is doing, and we have a few minutes here. I was wondering, Sheriff Smith, if you wouldn't mind just giving like a brief overview of the 5 steps that CSSE recommends, because again, I kind of feel like it's a template that could apply here also.
Yeah, and thank you, Tina, for referring to that. And again, this applies all over. One was that meeting part, and as election officials, recognizing that law enforcement and local elections and local law enforcement need to work together, is just ahead of time. Let's get to know who's who. As in our field in public safety, we always said you never wanted to be at a critical incident trading business cards because this person you're going to need to work with is the first time you met him. So get to know who those folks are. Start that really at the high level, between you and maybe your chiefs and your sheriff. Know who's who, and then as you meet, you share information. And one of the things, law enforcement has very little understanding of what happens in the election process, what you're going through. So on your side, to share that information of what election looks like, what your calendars look like, your timelines, critical locations, critical timepieces that they need to be thinking about. And then that sharing, there's also the sharing of the statutes, because I've found around this country, there is no police officer in a basic police academy that says, oh, I remember that 2 hours that we spent, studying elections, criminal law violation. None of us know that stuff. So what we're doing through CSSE is we're sharing that information, getting that to police so they know what those laws are that are of concern to elections officials. You're sharing that information. You're going to, everybody kind of has an idea of that picture. And then we come to the third step, which is agree. And the agreement is what the different roles of individuals. And one of the things through our guide, we're not telling you how that works in your state or within your jurisdiction. You will figure that out. And in the agreement phase, we've seen this with the elections officials, with what they're needing for services. You may have a jurisdiction in your area that if you have multiple police agencies, you may have a small one that says, we can't dedicate those resources. Okay, let's agree what you can and can't do. Is there somebody else that can stand the gap? And I can tell you, as sheriffs, as elected sheriffs, sometimes you're going to have that question. A sheriff might say, I want to be very careful. My name is on the ballot, much like elected elections officials. They try to separate. So sheriffs are going to be cognizant of, they don't want to look like they're impacting the election. So you're sharing that information. You're agreeing on what those roles are. Then you're developing the plans. Okay, we know what things might happen. Let's lay out plans for things that might reasonably happen. And I'll tell you, one of the things we talk about in our training sessions is watch, set up a Google News alert. I have it for election threats. So you can put it on different things. And anytime you see the things that are happening out there, make a little notebook. Okay, could this happen within our jurisdiction? And some of these might be things like these swatting incidents, even prior to them happening to elections officials. You go, this is something that could happen. All right, let's put together basic plans of what steps and what things what we might do. And so you have that book of things, and then you go to the practice part. And what Tina and I spend a lot of time, and some others with us, is tabletop exercises. And it's simply taking those plans and running them through and bringing the right people to the table. Let's practice this. Let's talk through a scenario or a series of scenarios, talk about what things can happen. And in that, part of what you're doing is you're doing some lessons. Oh, there were some things we could have done ahead of time. Or, yeah, there's actually a hole in our plan. We didn't think about this or this. And it's important that you bring the right people to the table. Now, if you don't mind, I'll just give a quick overview to you. Obviously, it's elections officials, it's their local law enforcement. There are state and federal partners that are out there. For example, the FBI has developed election crime coordinator agents within every field office. They have tools. They're never going to respond to the 911 call, but they have tools that those of us in local law enforcement don't have. So if you can have those folks there, emergency managers, because they're the ones that plan incidents, and they have a Rolodex of resources. If something happens that you lost utilities at one of your locations, they know how to get generators. They know how to do these things. Prosecutors, whether it's a district attorney or what you call them in your jurisdiction, because if you're talking election crimes, it's critical that they know what those elections are, and the police know how the prosecutors see it. And honestly, Tina, let them know we've had this conversation, that they understand the importance of the appropriate enforcement of those laws, because if they're not, how this can really destroy the elections process. You're bringing fire hazmat people. If you had a hazmat incident that occurred, you want to understand who those players are, what their response might look like. Your cybersecurity folks, your people that do your IT, so you understand. Because one of the conversations we'll have is in some of these exercises, people, we have cameras up. Do your cameras record? And oftentimes you may find out, well, they're viewable, but they're not recordable. Or if they're recordable, how are they kept? How long are they kept? So those kind of folks, the physical security, you want all those people at the table when you do these exercises, because you're going to want their perspective. And what you'll find out through the exercises, where your holes and where your weaknesses are, what things need to be addressed. And we talk about this when we do these as all hazard approach. This could be an individual trying to target you or your office. Or this could be an act of God. This could be a natural disaster. In my county, we had a major wildfire during an election that affected the mail-in ballots. And so you think through any number of things that can happen, because you'll find out if you're doing resiliency and continuity of operations plans, personal safety, cyber safety, those and communication, those will apply to almost any incident. And you asked for short, Tina, I apologize. That is my short version.
Admittedly, when we're traveling the country, there are times I do cut his mic. So just quickly, Captain Love, just want to touch base on, you and I have had a lot of conversations about the impact on victims. And I know you mentioned a few things a little bit earlier in this conversation, but I've expressed to you that I feel like when something like this happens to you, or you've been threatened, that there's a certain amount of your peace of mind that it feels like you lose, and it doesn't feel like you ever get it fully back. You were so kind to do a webinar with us at the elections group that focused on mental wellness. So as we kind of wrap this up, before we get ready to head into questions, what advice would you give, or what would you say to those who have been victims, might become victims, of how they can address their mental health, and some kind of pointers for us as we look at 2024?
Yeah, so first of all, I would talk about being proactive. We have unloaded a lot of information just during this hour here. And sometimes, we may think, well, you know what, I'm just going to dismiss all this because it's never going to happen to me, and I don't really have to worry about these things. And this is just about being proactive and shoring up your infrastructure, okay? Whether it's your home, your office, your personal space. That's all simple things that you can do to prevent. Be preventative, okay? If I can do things to prevent stress from coming into my life, then I do those things. Therefore, I don't have to deal with the impact of that stress on me and my mental wellness. So same thing here. And should you have an incident or you go through, whether it be swatting or doxing or any other type of personal threat or attack, know that it's going to impact you in some kind of way. And whatever you might go through behind this abnormal event is your normal reaction to it, okay? Your normal reaction to the abnormal event of being swatted, being doxxed, being threatened, being attacked, etc. Sometimes we go through grief. Sometimes we have intrusive thoughts. And I know, from the people that I know who have gone through these things, the intrusive thoughts being, is there someone in my backyard? Was that noise that I've been hearing for 10 years something different than what I've always thought it was? That sort of thing. These are real natural reactions that people have. And it's important to just acknowledge those things, and talk. Justin, I didn't think we could communicate, things through the video here, but I'm starting to get a little tingle too. But anyway, it's just ensure that it's important that you acknowledge whatever you might be feeling. If someone even tells you that you seem to be acting a little different lately, take that into account, because maybe it's something that you don't recognize is happening to you yourself. Flashbacks, having nightmares about things, all normal reactions to going through the abnormal event of being threatened or the perception that somebody's threatening you. And it's important to talk to somebody about it, whether it's a friend, whether it's talking to a therapist, or talking to somebody who you can confide in to share how you're feeling, because it is normal for you to experience those negative emotions and feelings behind something like this.
Thank you, Captain Love. And for those of you who maybe aren't aware, we do have that full webinar where we spoke to Captain Love about mental wellness, as well as the Carter Center, out on the Elections Group website, if you would like to view that. So we'll take a look and see if we have any questions right now. So if you have a question, I think we have a question, Trevor, that would be specifically probably for you. What about AI taking your data?
Great question. I'll kind of roll back to the beginning. Those AI platforms, generally, they are hoovering up and vacuuming up data that is available online. So the first step I would take is to follow some of the guidance in that checklist. Scrub your online profiles. Think about what information is out there for those AI platforms to take in. And third, reach out to the platform. If you believe that information is inappropriately out there, the same way you would with Facebook or Instagram or anything else, reach out to them, contact them, and tell them that you believe that they've got information that is personal, that is private, and that should not be part of their platform. You've got to be proactive about it. You're going to have to reach out if you do discover that. But the best thing to do is to try to leverage those channels that those AI platforms already have out there for you to report that if there's inappropriate information out there. And I will say, we in the United States should give a ton of thanks to the European Union. The European Union was in the lead, really, on the global data protection regulation that started to put restrictions on the amount of personal information that can be stored by commercial companies. And we've seen legislation in California, we've seen legislation proposed in Congress to try to encourage thoughtful and productive use of data and trying to prevent companies from just gathering personal information, private information without your knowledge.
Great, thank you. There's a question about the Brennan Center information. Oh, I'm sorry, Sheriff Smith, do you have a comment?
Yeah, Tina, if I can just build on what Trevor had on the AI, I think one aspect is that I know we've heard that concern. If they take your image, the visual or a voice and, create a false message, I think there's a few things that are critical in there. One of those is to report to your local law enforcement and your federal officials, because they may have a quicker track to getting into those social media. Certainly the federal government, FBI and DHS, they've got better connections to bring that information down. in a quicker form because anybody tries to get a hold of Meta or somebody, it's very difficult to do. That's just a reality. But the other part of that is the communications plan that you've thought about. The reality is, if somebody's bound and determined to do that, you can make it harder for them, but it may still happen. But it's how you respond to that. And just think, if it's elections day, we've heard this discussion. What if somebody uses my voice as an election official and broadcasts the message that, don't vote, the elections, is rigged, whatever. We see them attempt to use, and this may be someone within our borders. This may be a foreign actor in a foreign nation, but it's the communications plan. What do you have to share information back with your public and use? And the thing is, use the same social media platforms. Do you have a good one through your office, through your county or your borough or your district, or work with your police agencies, because they oftentimes have a very broad reach? Know your local. Do you have a trusted local reporter that you talk to these things ahead of time and emphasize the importance? If these things happen, or you have multiple media sources that you can talk ahead of time and say, if this goes out, I'm really going to need your help at sharing the truth on this. So think of those things ahead of time. If you can quickly get ahead of it, counter the message. At the same time, you're balancing with, as Trevor mentioned, any number of ways to try to get that source taken down. Again, if it's, these can come through China, through Russia, through other nations that are doing it to mess with our elections, your local police are going to have no power on that to stop that. That's going to be, at a federal level. But what you can do to minimize the impact and clean up that message to your community in a quick fashion, that's going to help in a lot of ways.
Thank you, Sheriff Smith. To address one of the questions in the Q&A in relation to the Brennan Center information, you can find that survey on the Brennan Center for Justice website. Additionally, I would mention that Issue 1 has recently put out a survey. Both of these surveys kind of address the number of threats and the harassment that election officials have received, but they also address the number of turnover, the turnover that we have seen in the election profession over the last 4 years. So again, Issue 1 in the Brennan Center for Justice, you can find that information on their site. I want to personally say, on behalf of the elections group, thank you for joining us today. It's been a lot of information in a little bit of time. To all of the election officials in the audience, I want to thank you for all that you are doing to make sure that our elections are free, fair, secure, accurate, and accessible. You are all unsung heroes. Also, I know I saw in the chat, but please know that the elections group would welcome the opportunity to come out, present on any of our topics that you find on our website. We are looking forward to doing that, to meeting all of you, and to sharing that information. In the chat, you can find the way that you can contact us. To do that at supportelectionsgroup.com. You can find the resources that we mentioned, again, at electionsgroup.com, as well as a host of other resources that you might find useful. Additionally, resources related to the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections can be found at safeelections.org. And thank you to all of our wonderful panelists today. You all are amazing. I appreciate, again, your experience, but also the work that you're doing for election officials and with election officials. So from my heart to all of you, thank you for that. To everyone watching, please stay safe and stay well. And until next time, we'll see you then. Thank you.